Good morning. The Bitcoin halving is here. We're 1 day and 7 hours away. There are a few things you need to do to prepare. Bitcoin, it's turned green on the day. The IMF, they've warned the US that its massive fiscal deficits have stoked inflation, pose a significant risk to the global economy. And then they go out and they publish a paper highlighting the effects that Bitcoin has as a flight to safety. We've got so much to get into. This is such an exciting time to be in the market. I've got a very special guest today, Brian D. Mint. We're going to get into the halving straight away, but first, how are you today, mate?
Good morning, y'all. Good day, Bitcoiners. I am so happy to be back. Last time I was on, we had an emergency partway through. I have extra staff on today to make sure that I don't have to run out of here because somebody is not feeling well. So we're good.
Yeah, you've got a pretty interesting business, so we'll dive into that. But like 1 day, we're 5 hours and 46 minutes away, roughly, from an event that only happens 210,000 blocks, roughly every 4 years. You've been through a few halvings already now, Brian. What do you expect to happen, I guess, is the first question. And then also, how should people prepare with their Bitcoin, maybe the management to UTXOs, and also psychologically? Like, I think that's the biggest thing coming into an event like that. Some people think their Bitcoin stack's going to be cut in half, which is absurd. But what are some of the key points after someone that's been here for a few of these?
Yeah, I think that if you're coming in and you think that there's just that the halving is a non-event, I mean, I think that most Bitcoiners recognize that it is a big deal, but a lot of people that are on the fringes or your friends, they might be saying things like, oh, okay, well, it just cuts, the supply gets cut in half, but that doesn't necessarily change demand. You're right. It doesn't force demand to be changed, but think about the way human psychology works and then go look back at the chart. Like, I love when somebody just shows the price on Bitcoin halving day. And you look at that, like it's massive growth and massive buying power appreciation. I find myself accidentally using the term Bitcoin price all the time. It's a proxy for saying Bitcoin buying power. Bitcoin buying power, what you can buy with your Bitcoin, goes up every 4 years. And I think one of the unsung heroes, or the point that isn't made enough, Sean, I've heard you make this point, but I just think in Bitcoin it's not talked about enough, is the fact that we hit a new all-time high in buying power before the Bitcoin halving. That's just never happened before. We've never hit an all-time high before. That shows that people understand that this event matters. Some people are saying, well, it's because the ETFs were approved. Yes. Why do you think BlackRock rushed to have their ETF approved before the halving? They're fully aware. They are buyers of Bitcoin as well. Their customers are buyers of Bitcoin and all of the other ETFs. Yes, that's why demand goes up around the halving, usually after the halving. But the halving is such a fact now. It's such a concrete law of the universe that there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and the daily issuance of that is getting cut in half every 4 years. The universe is aware of this now. And so more and more people are buying it before the halving. That shows emphatically that there's been a popular culture realization that the halving is going to move the price, and we hit new all-time high before the halving. What does that mean for 12 months from now? I think that means the super cycle. I think that means the biggest run up in Bitcoin buying power appreciation that we've ever seen after a halving ever in the history of Bitcoin.
Do you think, like, I feel like this cycle, and probably not prepared for what's coming mentally for the up days. Like Samson Mow, he's talking about Amiga candles, $100,000 in a day. I guess it depends what currency you're looking at on the probability of that happening. But say we pump to extraordinary levels. Hypothetically, 500,000, $1 million, whatever it is, $10 million. The number doesn't really matter, but are we going to see a major correction after that? Or do you think once the super cycle's here and we pump, then it's just up and to the right in perpetuality?
Yeah, I think it'll be up and to the right over, again, that zoomed out chart. I don't think that your corrections are going to be 80%. Again, you're going to have corrections though. Like assets correct all the time. Like even sound money will go up and down because it'll start to adhere to economic principles. And we'll talk about the parallel economy and stuff like that. But as economies are priced in Bitcoin, economies themselves go up and down in value as people produce more and more innovation is made. That means everybody in that economy that holds that currency, especially if it's a fixed supply currency, they will get richer. As productivity in economies, which can happen sometimes, goes down, there's going to be less buying power. So yes, Bitcoin, even when entire economies are priced in Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin or the buying power of Bitcoin will go up and down, but that's actually going to be adhering to natural economic principles. It's what it isn't, though. It's not a down into the right chart like fiat currency. Guaranteed. No fiat currency ever promises to be anything other than down into the right.
Yeah.
Bitcoin will be up and to the right over longer time frames with small corrections, small variations and changes, again, which is perfectly normal for a fixed supply currency in an economy.
Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, we used to have recessions. And then we don't really have recessions anymore. They've sort of just disappeared and everyone was so afraid of them. But they never lasted for very long. They weren't really that painful to get through. Like they were a little bit painful. Like my mum lost 2 investment properties, folded a business and things like that. And within every crisis, though, there's opportunity. So there would have been someone on the other side that would have picked the business, the properties up pretty cheaply. And then after the recession and it turns back up, it's way higher than what it was. But now recessions have stopped. Brian, I want to jump into the news, what's happening really quickly. We'll flip through a couple of things. There's a couple of big things happening. What Walker has to say, I love Walker. And do you know Walker personally?
I've talked to Walker maybe a couple times, like at conferences and things like that. But no, I mean, most of me is just like, sliding into his comments and, congratulating him. Cause I mean, that guy, I don't know who makes more banger tweets than Walker. He has the greatest tweets. He's probably the #1 Twitter follow you can do.
Yeah, he is. And is he, Walker's also Dick, isn't he? Cuckerson? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he is. Yes.
And then who's
which is probably an even better follow. I said that's probably the #1 follow.
It's good. The first time Dick got me, I was like, oh man, like Dick, you are a dick, like to your name's sake. And then I'm like, well played, Walker. But what Walker has to say here is, do you feel fear, a sense of uncertainty creeping in? Are you starting to doubt, thinking maybe I should sell now and buy back lower? Good. That's exactly the point at which Bitcoin will melt your face. The reason I bring that up is because we're going to have these $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 days. They're coming. Even sort of last week is a $10,000 week down. Just get prepared, get ready for it, because for the downs, like if you get ready for the downs, then you can deserve the ups. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this looks like it's just released. This is the IMF. And they've published a paper on Bitcoin cross-border flows, and Sam Callahan from Swans provided the 3 major takeaways here. This is absolutely fascinating. The IMF isn't promoting Bitcoin, but if people take the time to take excerpts out like Sam has, it's pretty positive. Anyway, I'll get your thoughts. I'll read through it real quick, Brian. The study provides evidence that increased Bitcoin activity occurs as investors move away from risk assets and supports the findings of other studies that Bitcoin can be used to hedge global uncertainties. An increase in the VIX is associated with higher Chainalysis inflows and outflows. This significant positive response may reflect increased activity via the Bitcoin market as investors move away from risk assets. Moving away from risk assets, the IMF is clearly labeling Bitcoin as a risk-off asset. So this study shows that contrary to popular belief, individuals around the globe are treating Bitcoin as a risk-off asset rather than a risky one. Sorry, I should have let Sam say it. 2, the study concludes that people appear to be turning to Bitcoin to flee instability in their local economies and currencies and to circumvent capital controls. So the IMF, we contribute to this debate by providing cross-country panel evidence that off-chain cross-border outflows are positively correlated with the Bitcoin parallel premium. There's your probably your favorite word at the moment, parallel. We'll dive into that. But the Bitcoin parallel premium, which we interpret as a broader proxy for exchange rate pressures reflecting macroeconomic imbalances, and increasing the parallel premium is associated with higher local Bitcoin outflows. This finding indicates that Bitcoin may be used to circumvent capital controls. So people appear to be using Bitcoin just as it was intended to be used, as censorship-resistant money that can protect them from currency instability and government censorship seizure. Nice. So that last part's by Sam. And the last point here, the findings highlight that Bitcoin flows are typically larger, and this is fascinating, emerging and developing markets like Argentina and Venezuela compared to advanced economies with sophisticated financial markets. I don't know if you'd call our market sophisticated, but countries with the largest Bitcoin inflows: Seychelles, Venezuela, Moldova, Venezuela, Nigeria, Central African Republic. One possible explanation for the high inflows in countries like Seychelles and Moldova is the low tax and light touch regulation that have attracted crypto exchanges to their shore. However, these countries are notable because many of them have high rates of currency debasement and economic stability, indicating that people are turning to Bitcoin as a safe haven asset. The words of the IMF, like, what? Like right before the Bitcoin halving? That's crazy. That sounds pretty bullish to me.
It's incredibly bullish. I mean, it's shockingly bullish, and that, like, you know, you always wonder, because these organizations and these agencies, they're large, right? It's not just one person. As much as there is like top down control in these agencies, you wonder when there's tweets like who's putting out this report or this tweet. I mean, if you think back to the pre-ETF. There was people within like some of these companies like BlackRock and Van Eck and these different firms that were putting out reports, and it was just like two of their analysts putting out reports that were saying that your allocation should be like 80% in Bitcoin, right? For your portfolio. And so obviously that wasn't from everybody, you know, that wasn't from Larry Fink at BlackRock, but that was from some of their analysts. And so you wonder, these IMF reports, who are these coming from? So just kind of a little anecdote. When I think I shared on your show a few times ago, but with Orange Pill app last year, we went with Dennis Porter, me and Mateo, and like 20 other people we found in Orange Pill app that lived near the DC area. We went and we gave a copy of the Bitcoin Standard to every senator and congressman in Washington, DC. And obviously most of those people, like when we actually got face to face with these Congress people, they were like, oh, Bitcoin, whatever, you know, oh, it's like crypto, you know, they were just kind of like, they didn't either know about it or they seemed kind of antagonistic to it. But when we talked to their staffers, the interns that were working for them, they were excited. They're, oh yeah, let me read the book. Oh wait, like, yeah, I know about Bitcoin. The people behind the scenes, the ones that feed them information, were very keen on Bitcoin. These are kids that are just out of college. These are people that are kind of up and coming in the world. They haven't been gripped by the machine, by the system yet. And so you wonder, maybe if that's some of where this is coming from the IMF, or the people who haven't been gripped by the swamp yet, the swamp culture. Because yes, I mean, the IMF has been exerting a lot of power towards Venezuela with maybe withholding loans and things like that, in part because they don't like the freedom that Bitcoin's given El Salvador. But here on the other side, maybe it's just the data proves itself. If you see these really unstable economies where we're like, oh my gosh, Bitcoin's down by 10% in the last week, we're freaking out. Well, 10% might not be a huge correction compared to some of these currencies. If Bitcoin's the faster horse in the race, and they have access to it, and those people, not only does it give them a little bit more stability than their local currency, it actually enables them to tie into a global economy, because now they have shared currency with people in the United States, with people in Australia, people in Great Britain, because there's people in all those countries who accept Bitcoin. Now they're tied into other people around the world that are in first world, more stable, wealthier economies. It provides all sorts of value for those people. So yeah, I think perhaps the IMF is tapping into that reality.
Yeah. I think, like, say like the worst case scenario in Bitcoin, it can go down 100%, and that's so unlikely. Like, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to be buying the whole way down, and I'll buy the whole way back up again. Same thing I've been doing every day, TikTok, next block. But say 100% downside could happen. There's a slight possibility. The probability is so low, but the upside is so, like, it's infinite. It's infinity divided by 21 million. We see Knut has contributed to your book as well. We'll bring that up. But their currency, wherever you are in the world, is 100% guaranteed to go to zero. Like, not a probability, not a possibility, 100% mathematical certainty. So anyone, and like you're saying, it's just the fastest horse in the race. But people are going to wake up more and more and more. And I don't think they're going to care about these $10, $20, $30,000 days or 20% down, 30% down, because they know over time they're still going to be better off, regardless of, even if Bitcoin price crashed, significantly back down to $3,000, which I don't see that happening. They're still way better off than if they were to hold the US dollar, which is the strongest currency in the world. Brian, just really quickly, I'd just like to do a quick shout out to today's sponsor, the Bitcoin Way. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new to Bitcoin, if you still have Bitcoin on an exchange, definitely reach out to the Bitcoin Way. These guys have got 25 years cybersecurity experience. Safety and Moose, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, also recommends this professional Bitcoin IT team, saying this is a service I've always wanted. They can help you set up a node, air gap your wallet, which is huge. So your hardware signing device, the thing that holds the password to your Bitcoin, your private keys, never touch your computer, never touch the internet. That's absolutely major. It looks like in the US as well, the 9/11 cyber attacks that are going on at the moment. I want to dive into that. A little bit shaky on the news there. But if you can hack emergency services, somebody with ill intent has no problem getting into your system. So make sure your hardware wallet is air-gapped at the very least. If you need help, there is a link at the top of the description. The first 30 minutes is free. Brian, how important do you think an air-gapped wallet is?
I mean, it's incredible. Like, you don't want to leave the vulnerability of your life savings, or even if it's just a portion of some of us keep different wallets and things like that. Even if it's just a year's worth of your work, like, do you really want to piss away a year's worth of your labor and your work that you stored up in the world's soundest money because you had a bug on your computer? Like, you don't want to be vulnerable to digital bugs or just errors that can happen, glitches that can happen in computers, even if there's no nefarious activity. If you're beholden to only the digital realm. That's what makes Bitcoin as a whole so beautiful. It's the perfect synergy between the digital realm and the physical realm. Like, you need physical energy in reality to make Bitcoin work. So it harnesses the benefits of both. Do the same in your security. Harness the benefits of the physical world, air-gapped physical technology with the digital technology. It's part of the ethos of Bitcoin.
Yeah. And with Bitcoin, like you're saying, like, whether it's a year or a month or whatever it is, to take risks for a couple of $100, like the reason I bring this up here, Bitcoin's gone up into the right for 49 days in a row. It's been above 60,000. For a couple of $100, if people are willing to take that risk for working so hard, like you're saying, the world's hardest asset, like, there's only 21 million of these things floating out there in cyberspace. And I think, like you were saying, whether we get a super cycle this cycle or it takes, another 1 or 2 cycles, who knows? But it's starting, like, we can see it, like the pace of the world failing, to say it lightly, is accelerating quicker. And, the IMF publishing that paper, Bitcoin holding above 60,000 for 49 days in a row. The halving happening tomorrow, like the inflation rate, half of that of gold. It's crazy. I wouldn't be leaving anything up to risk, but then after you do that, I guess enjoy it. So let's do a bit of a transition.
Real quick, can I say something on that though? Just as far as you said, the currency's failing. We don't realize, because most of us, a lot of the viewers, live in first world nations, currencies that have been around for most of our life. If your currency's been around for most of your life, it means it's close to dying. Like currencies, the upper limit is about 48 years. The Great British Pound, Japanese yen, and the US dollar are about 3 years into their fiat life cycle at this point. We're on life support now. We're 10 years away in the US from 100% of our tax revenue going to pay just the debt. Like that's just around the corner. But
wait. Just how many years from 100%? Say that again.
10 years. In a decade, 100% of the tax revenue from US citizens will go to paying our debt in 10 years.
Wow.
And so the system has to break no later than then, right? I mean, that's your upper limit. And obviously at what threshold, when 50% of tax revenue goes to paying the debt, how many people aren't getting their Social Security? Basically what it means is, to make up for all that other stuff, you have to turn on the money printers in order to pay those things. And then you get this hyperinflationary cycle. And my point there is this. So I looked up a post I put out from a few months ago. The German mark, we're all familiar with Weimar Germany, but I don't think a lot of us recognize how fast it happened. In 1914, you could get 4.2. So let's just call it 4. You could get 4 marks for $1. So 1914, 4 marks, $1. 5 years later, 1919, you could get 8 marks for $1. So they lost half the value of their currency in 5 years. That sucks. So 1914, 4 marks to $1. 1919, 8 marks to $1. 1923, you ready for this one? 4.2 trillion marks to $1.
What?
So 5 years, you lost half of it. 5 years, you lost half of it. The next 4 years, 4.2 trillion marks to $1. That's not hyperbole. That's actually what happened to the currency. And so it happens what seems fast. Like when you go from 1914 to 1919, everybody's talking about inflation. It's on everybody's mind. And people are like, yeah, this has got to be as bad as it can get. No, they weren't even close to as bad as it can get. Go look this up in any history book. Go Google it or whatever. But what was the conversion rate of dollars to German marks? Not the Rentenmark mark. That was the new currency that they created. But the German mark, the Weimar German mark, 1923, 4.2 trillion marks to $1. Their smallest unit of currency was a 1 trillion mark note. So like your $1 bill, your smallest unit of currency was 1 trillion marks at that time. So it happens, and it's kind of on the public's mind. But then when it really cranks, it really cranks. And guys, Weimar Germany was nothing. We have a worldwide currency in the US dollar. Everything's fiat. It's all tied together. We've never seen the change that's coming. We've never seen anything like it. We've never seen anything on this scale. But very optimistically, when we talk about Parallel later on, when we talk about the book, there's a lot of things to be optimistic about, and we'll share that as well.
There sure is. We've got a bit of news, but I think I just wanted to bring up this, and then we'll dive into Parallel, because it's launching tomorrow on the halving. But the US national debt, it's pretty quickly approaching $35 trillion. Debt per citizen, $100,000 the moment they're born. Debt per taxpayer, $266,000. All these numbers are just going up. And like I spent a couple of years in Indonesia when I was really young. I'm pretty sure we had $1 trillion note as well. I don't think it was $1 billion. I'm pretty sure it was $1 trillion note, trillion rupiah. And it feels like it could never, ever happen. But Bitcoin hit an all-time high here in Australia and is 12.5% above the United States dollar, like 5 weeks ago when this happened. So over the last 3 years, we've lost 12.5% against the US dollar. The US dollar's lost about 20% of its purchasing power. So in the last 3 years, we've lost 40% of our purchasing power here in Australia to, 3 years ago. And that's pretty insane. If someone was set for retirement, simple numbers, they had $1 million, they can only buy $600,000 worth of stuff. If this goes on at the same rate for, say, another 4 years, they're buying what, $400,000 worth of stuff, $300,000 stuff. And these people especially here in Australia, when they go into retirement, they can go into cash. Well, cash is a melting ice cube. The stock market's held up by all this money printing that we've gotten. I don't see any hope in the traditional system whatsoever. I have no faith. CBDCs are coming. Like, I believe they're just going to print us into oblivion, and the problem is going to get worse and worse and worse, and they're going to start spruiking that the solution to this is because the money was not digital. We need to bring out a CBDCs. CBDCs coming out here, and then, g'day, you're a slave. Like, that's that option, and I think that's coming. But as Bitcoiners, we realize that there's something else we can do, and that's opt out. And I guess the biggest message on the channel is just buy, stack, and chill, like, as much as possible, because this is happening. If you can do us a favor and smash the like button, hit subscribe if we vibe, but just buy, stack, and chill if you're going to do one of those three things. So the world's dystopian, Brian. CBDCs are coming, Australian digital IDs. Like, they're not even voting on it here, and they're just bringing them in, rubber stamping them, not letting anyone have a say. I've reached out to one of the right-wing politicians to see if she'll come on the show and talk about it. She is one of the people I don't agree with hardly anything of her agenda. Number one, she's a politician. Number two, they've got some really rubbish ideas, but they are fighting against the CBDCs in Parliament. So I think that could be pretty interesting. But I don't think, like, say they stop it, it's coming regardless. They'll just wait another 4 years, you know, like they've been on this path for so long. So, like, I've no faith in the system. Like, it is what it is. I think it's failing. Maybe it doesn't. Bitcoin's still going to win anyway. But say the system does fail. How's Bitcoin fix this? Where's Bitcoin lead? What's this book about? Parallel, the Bitcoin social layer. You've written it with some really incredible people, Knut and Daniel Prince there. But what's the thesis? What was the reason for doing it? And I guess, where's the hope that Bitcoin offers come into the mix?
Yeah, man. I just realized my hat like matches the book. That worked out really well. So no, I mean,
wait, just 2 secs. This drops tomorrow, yeah? Like, we're hours away, man.
Yeah. So, like, I'm on the 18th where I live right now. So it comes out on the 20th, my time. So it'd probably be like the 21st your time. Like, I think based off of midnight on the 20th. Yeah. PST. So yes, thank you for clarifying. Yes, it comes out this weekend. So wow. You guys, if you like ebooks, please go to Amazon, pre-order the ebook. I think it would be incredible when you pre-order, all of those sales go through on day one. How incredible would it be if on the Bitcoin halving day or with the weekend of the Bitcoin halving, if the #1 book in the world on inflation was a Bitcoin book? I think that would be incredible. So if you guys, it's $2.99 US to get the ebook. Now I'm gonna let you guys know here, and I've tweeted this out, so it's not a secret. But I am gonna give you a little advanced tip, because Sean's been such a huge supporter of my first book, Bitcoin Evangelism. But there is a 1 million sat Bitcoin wallet in the book, which we've mentioned before. The seed words, it's 12 seed words throughout. Now, if you've read Bitcoin Evangelism, you have a distinct advantage at finding the seed phrase in parallel. So you can find the seed phrase without having read Bitcoin Evangelism. You could figure it out if you thought very outside of the box, if you kind of know your stuff. But if you've read Bitcoin Evangelism, you will definitely have an advantage at that 1 million sat wallet. So if you pre-order the ebook, you get to start looking before everybody else, because as soon as the book goes live, you can start reading it. You can start looking for that seed phrase, where anybody that orders a physical copy has to wait a few days for it to come in the mail. This book, guys, I'm very excited about it. I'm so blessed to get to co-author it, like you said, Sean, with Knut Svanholm, Daniel Prince, these guys that before I ever wrote a Bitcoin book, I was just a huge fan of them in the space. These guys have brilliant ideas, and they, I worked with them at Orange Pill app, and when I asked them, like, hey, would you guys mind contributing? I had to, finally a month ago, they finally agreed that I could pay them something. These guys just wanted to contribute ideas to furthering. They're really big believers in the parallel Bitcoin economy. And for everything that we said earlier about the CBDCs coming and currencies failing, all that, we talk about that in a little bit more in the first chapter of the book. It's called The Perfect Storm of Perfect Storms. If you guys are familiar with what a perfect storm is, it's when you have 2, 3, or 4 elements, like 2, 3, or 4 storms inside of one storm that makes a superstorm. It's very destructive. It's a very big deal. Well, what we have right now in world history is a perfect storm of 4 perfect storms. So each of those storms has 2 or 3 storms inside of it. So you're dealing with about 12 different perfect storms that are converging right now that makes this absolutely the most unique time in human history. But you and I have been somehow elected to live in this time. Like nobody in your lineage before you or nobody to come was selected for this time other than you. And if you're paying attention to Bitcoin and if you're in Bitcoin, for whatever reason, you're in the crosshairs of this revolution. And so there's a pretty big calling on those of us that are in this time and that have this knowledge. And when CBDCs come out, that's going to be the easiest thing ever for them to roll out because they can essentially buy anybody's votes, not just buying the politicians' votes, but they're just going to load your wallet with however much they need to load into it to make everybody accept it, right? They're going to say, hey, we're going to give everybody $30 in your CBDC wallet. And people are like, screw that. Like, that's not enough. We'll give you 300. Nah, that doesn't get me anything. 3,000, 30,000. I mean, they can buy it because it's just numbers on a keyboard to them. So they will be able to buy the implementation of CBDCs. And not only that, but these politicians, they actually believe, because like Sean said, the inflation and all those things that they're dealing with are absolutely inevitable. But these politicians, these economists, this is what they actually believe. They think that CBDCs will be the one time that fiat currencies will ever be able to be fixed. Because what they believe is if you have a digital wallet that a central bank can control, then you can fix inflation anytime you want. All you have to do is put spending caps on an account. If you give everybody $40 that they can spend on any given day, if you do that for a week, then guess what? You fixed inflation, because inflation isn't just the amount of currency that's in a society. It's about how fast it goes through the society. So there's actually a formula. It's how much currency there is times the velocity of currency divided by how much wealth is in that society. So if you manipulate some of those numbers, these economists believe that they can cure inflation through inorganic means. But we know that anytime man tries to get in the way of nature, we screw it up. We defy the laws of physics, we defy the laws of nature, and then we make things worse. What a Bitcoin parallel economy adheres to are the natural laws of market forces. And so a natural Bitcoin social layer, a Bitcoin parallel economy, is the natural fix to our economic problems. And so the book's a deep dive on that. It deep dives into a few subjects. Like I said, those perfect storms. It's also a deep dive on propaganda. My course of study was in college was human behavioral sciences with an emphasis in propaganda. So it's not just I heard that implementing propaganda is just like repeating a lie enough times. That's part of it. But why does anybody ever accept a fiat social layer? Why do we ever accept a fiat system and stay in it? Well, this book's going to answer that question. And once you start to understand why society accepts the world that's in front of them, we can start to unwind that a little bit more and not only help orange pill people, but literally build a system that is the cure for that. Just like people accept the internet and use it now, that's going to be the number one way we orange pill people, is not by telling them about how great Bitcoin is. Some people will be orange pilled that way, but by building a system that is literally their escape hatch from this terrible, terrible fiat collapse that is going to come. And this is the last thing I'll say for now. I'll stop talking for a second here. But what makes this unique is in history, whether you're talking about the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, the collapse of the Soviet Union, every superpower that has ever fallen, in the wake of that, a parallel economy always emerges. That's cool, right? Okay, so a parallel economy will emerge. But the bad news is that only lasts for a half of a generation until the state re-centralizes power and then reabsorbs the parallel system back into the mother economy. So why is what we have before us a unique situation? Well, one of the reasons is we've never had decentralized money. Those parallel economies were always had disorganized. It was decentralized money, but it was disorganized. They would say, okay, we would have cigarettes or oil or gas or seashells or whatever it was. Different types of things would emerge in those economies, but they didn't have good conversion rates. All the tenets of sound money weren't necessarily present in those things, and they weren't international. So you weren't able to trade with other people outside of your local region. And so what Bitcoin represents is the first ever decentralized money that will exist while these parallel economies are emerging. And here's the biggest kicker right here. And if you guys pay attention to nothing else, please pay attention to this. All of those parallel economies of the past, which always develop, there's always a parallel economy after the collapse of empire. Those always developed in response to the collapse. Bitcoin is being developed 15 years or more before the collapse of empire. We have a head start, an international head start. I mean, Sean's in Australia. I'm in California. We have friends all over the world. We're developing this international thing, and it's happening before the collapse of the empire. We're building something that will last even once the re-centralization of power happens in the state after the fall of the empire.
If people hold their own Bitcoin keys.
That's the kicker. That's the kicker.
But I think that's pretty exciting. Like you're saying, we've never had something that's going to last. Bitcoin's going to be around in 1,000 years. If one person finds value in it, it's still going to be here. And I dare say they're going to. Do you think it's going to take long for that Bitcoin parallel economy? Like we're already seeing it. Like that. What was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? I can't remember their name, but they're like a beef company. They had cattle, and they announced that they're adopting a Bitcoin strategy and accepting Bitcoin, and their sales went through the roof like straight away. Yeah. So for them, they're like, whoa, like we didn't announce how much we're buying, what we're going to use as a treasury reserve asset, but we accept Bitcoin. We're for Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin has just like flocked there, and their sales went through the roof straight away. Is that an anomaly? That's not the right word.
Anomaly.
You know the word I'm trying.
Anomaly. Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not an anomaly. We actually, you hit the nail on the head, my friend. There's a chapter in the book called the Bitcoin Cheat Code. This is because that's what, excuse me. It's what Peter McCormick calls the Bitcoin cheat code. It's from an interview I did with him. We kind of break down some of the transcript of the interview with him, but then we go on to elaborate a bit more. Peter McCormick bought I don't know if your audience is familiar with English soccer. I'm not. I call it soccer still. So it's football apparently. But there's 10.
I call it soccer.
Okay, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there we go. I like yeah, we have something in common there.
That makes sense.
There's 10 tiers in English football. So there's like the 10th tier is the least prestigious, and then you go all the way up to the Premier League, and you can win your way through that. Now, it's very difficult because you have to have money and resources and stuff to buy your way up and buy better teams and things like that to win your way up. And Peter bought a 10th tier team. They won their first season, and they're doing very well their second season, and they're progressing through the league. And he credits the fact that he took on the Bitcoin team by making it the Bitcoin team. When all the other teams in like the 9th tier, they would get maybe 100 people at their games. He'd get 500 people at his games. And then not only that, the local teams would get like a local barber would sponsor, they'd put a banner up and it'd be like Jim's Haircuts from down the street, which is fine. They're trying to support their local soccer team. But Peter McCormick's team is getting like international Bitcoin sponsors, like Orangeville app. We sponsor them. There's all sorts of Bitcoin companies that are investing all this money in the Bitcoin team because
Tyler
Bitcoin
and Cameron.
What's that?
Tyler and Cameron.
Yeah,
investing.
Now, did they invest in Bedford or did they invest in another team in Bedford? I was
no, in Bedford and Peter McCormick's 4.6 mil.
Okay,
yeah.
So there you go. I read a thing. I couldn't tell if there was like a second team. I didn't finish the article, but yeah. I mean, think about that. you're getting people from around the world that are supporting your cause, just like you said with that beef company. If you're a local plumber and you want to become the Bitcoin plumber tomorrow, you can do that. Just put it in your Twitter profile, put it in your Orange Pill app profile, because at least with Orange Pill app, you can find local Bitcoiners and things like that. I just found a local barber that accepts Bitcoin through Orange Pill app. That's my new barber. Hadn't talked to him before, went on his website and like you looked up his portfolio and stuff, like the guy's legit, like he does good work and stuff like that. And now I have a new barber because he accepts Bitcoin and he lives within 20 minutes of where I live. Like that's how this thing develops, because Bitcoiners will seek out other Bitcoiners. And think about it. Bitcoiners are the customers you want, because who has appreciating buying power? Fiat. People who hold fiat, Michael Saylor calls them poor, right? But if you have Bitcoin, you have appreciating buying power. And I think that reality over the next 12 to 18 months is going to become even more enticing for businesses, for merchants, because Bitcoiners will be seen more and more as the wealthy cross-section of society, because they hold good money. And so businesses will want to appeal to those people. I think that we're going to see an explosion in the parallel economy because of this. And now I think the biggest catalyst, I pray that CBDCs are the most atrocious thing ever. I'm speaking a little tongue in cheek, because as the worse CBDCs are, the more people will flock to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin already exists. Again, we're not developing this in response to the CBDC. We're developing it before the CBDC is copying Bitcoin. They credit Bitcoin with the technology. Obviously, it's not what Bitcoin is, but they're crediting Bitcoin. They're coming after. The thing that comes later historically has been the one that fails. And so Bitcoin is the one that's leading the way on this. There's a lot of blue sky ahead. The earlier you are in adopting the economy, the better off you'll be. There's people, and now this I would say there's a difference between just buying and holding Bitcoin, which is absolutely fantastic. But then there's a second step of participating in the economy. That doesn't mean you have to spend your Bitcoin. That just means you're putting yourself out there, willing to accept Bitcoin for the things that you do. Because as soon as you do that, as soon as you earn a little bit of Bitcoin for your goods and services, you're probably a little bit more willing to spend it, especially with other Bitcoiners. And I think that you have your stash, that's your generational wealth, but then you start to have this spending money, this pocket change from Bitcoin you've earned. That's where the economy really gets stimulated. And think about it. The people who developed the internet economy gained vastly more wealth, because those were the Elon Musks who developed the payment systems for the internet economy, or Jeff Bezos who developed commerce for the internet economy. Those guys are extremely wealthy. There were people who bought and held domain names, or they bought and held internet stock. They made $5 million, $10 million. They became very, very wealthy as well. But there's a big difference between making $10 million off of selling a domain name that you bought and held versus riding the economy and helping build that economy and it making you $200-300 billion. Those are vastly different things. And so when you participate in the Bitcoin economy, you're developing all sorts of international connections and local connections with people whom are willing to buy your goods and services. It's opening you up to a much broader audience than you ever had before. And with a much broader audience of people with wealthy buying power, it's going to inevitably make you more powerful, more relevant within that economy, meaning more money and more resources for you.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think dealing with Bitcoiners as a whole, you're just dealing with people that have a whole lot more integrity, that thinking freely, and we are who we spend time with. So I guess by default, if you're offering Bitcoin and people are starting to pay in Bitcoin, you've already got a foundation to be able to start a conversation there in your store or whatever. And who knows what opportunities come from that as well. You brought up Orange Pill app a couple of times. I'd like to announce a giveaway of the Orange Pill app. I hit up Brian just before we went live, not sponsored or anything, just an FYI. Orange Pill app's awesome. I'm on there, so you can find me. I use it mostly when I'm traveling. We've got a couple of people here on it. But when I was in the States, man, it was so awesome. Like it's just so easy. Who's near me? Hey, I'm here for a couple of days. Would you like to catch up? It's pretty cool. But you can meet people. You can find friends that stack sats. I believe that's your tagline. Stack friends that stack sats.
There you go.
And there we go. And also to be able to find businesses. You said you found your barber as well. Let's talk about what it is first, and then you can announce the giveaway, what Orange Pill App's willing to do for this community, and we'll probably do it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much, Sean. You've always been a big supporter of not only the books, but Orange Pill App, and then just obviously a huge supporter of Bitcoin. So anytime Bitcoin's supported, everybody involved with Bitcoin benefits from it in one way or the other. But Orange Pill App, all we are, it's super simple. We're an app that's designed with the core focus is on connecting you with other Bitcoiners in real life. Like obviously you can get in the app and chat in groups and things like that. And so you can make online friends, but there's plenty of other tools for that. Twitter's a good space for that. Obviously there's bots and things like that on Twitter, but you can
one or two.
Yeah, one or two. And you can go on Nostr, which we are not a competitor with Nostr or Twitter. Like those are social media where we call ourselves a social network, meaning that we're trying to help facilitate you to network with other people. You can create events. If you host meetups, you can put your event or your meetup in Orange Pill App, so other local people will find you. When you open the app, it shows you people that are generally close to you, close enough to go out and grab coffee with that afternoon, or tea, or if you want to grab a beer or a bite to eat. I've met over a dozen Bitcoiners in my area that we just go hang out and you go talk for 2 or 3 hours, and it's not weird. You sit down with these people and you immediately have a great conversation. And it's really cool to be able to expand your Bitcoin network. Because right now we're at the fun stage. But again, flash forward to what if CBDCs are absolutely atrocious? Having Bitcoin is a really big part of the equation. But if my money or my fiat currency becomes so atrocious that my only option is to eat bug protein, or to feed my kids bug protein is
read the books, ladies and gentlemen.
As Sean so frequently reminds you, I think the world is now aware of bug protein because of this show. But if the CBDC says that you and your family have to eat bug protein because it's your civic duty, and guess what? Your money doesn't buy you anything besides bug protein. every sat you stacked and every Bitcoiner rancher's hand you shook, the value proposition will never have been higher on both of those things. So holding Bitcoin is part of it, but if you don't know anybody with whom you can spend it if you really need to, then perhaps we missed a little bit of the importance, because like what did Satoshi call the Bitcoin white paper? Now it doesn't mean everything Satoshi said we have to follow. Like,
peer-to-peer,
but
electronic cash.
Peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That was the intention of this thing in the first place. And so, yes, all the things that, finite currency and all those things are wonderful elements of Bitcoin. But the real power, that's why the subtitle of the book, Parallel, is the Bitcoin social layer. And that's Knut's chapter, is that, and he kind of says some inflammatory stuff. He says things like, Bitcoin if you feel a little pissed off reading Knut's stuff, just know he's like sitting in a room laughing somewhere. Like he's happy that there's always a great point to it. And he kind of starts the book off by saying, Bitcoin's nothing. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros. Bitcoin is the people, and that type of thing. But at the end of the day, what is anything? Like, what is anything without the people? Like, Bitcoin is a tool that we use. It's one of the greatest tools ever, but you need to be a part of it. And so those interpersonal connections are incredibly, incredibly valuable. And that's all we're trying to do at Orange Pill App, is have a tool. And now Orange Pill App's only been out for like a year and a half. We haven't been out for that long. And so these tools to connect Bitcoiners have not existed in previous bull runs. And so we're really excited to see what things like Nostr and Orange Pill App and all of the other tools like Geyser Fund and all these different things that have been built in this last bear market, what's going to happen in this bull market now that all these tools are online. So, but as Sean said, we're going to do a 1-year giveaway. Orange Pill App is a subscription-based model That's by design. It's not a bug. It's a feature. There is a small cost associated with Orange Pill app. That's the only way you get rid of spammers, scammers, and bots. So there's no spammers, scammers, and bots. You're not going to get spammed in the app because there's a cost associated with it. And so that protects the user. But because Sean, his audience is so well vetted, and Sean's going to vet that person to make sure that we have a real Bitcoiner coming on, we at Orange Pill app have said, Sean, we want one of your audience members to get a 1-year subscription to Orange Pill app. So he's going to be doing that giveaway soon. And he's going to make sure he's going to give you a 100 question test to make sure you're real big. I'm just kidding. He's not going to do any of that.
I think maybe I need to do that now.
Yeah. So, but anyways, we would love for you guys to join Orange Pill app. The newest thing that we just released is our merchant section. So yes, you can actually find local merchants. And if you're a Bitcoin merchant, go to orangepillapp.com/merchants and sign up as a brick and mortar merchant so that people can find you. We want to stimulate and develop the parallel economy and all the interpersonal connections that are necessary for that. Without building, this stuff isn't going to happen. And so the most important piece of that is the mortar. It's you guys. It's the glue of Bitcoin are the people.
That's awesome. So we'll figure out a way, ladies and gentlemen, on how to do that 1-year subscription, and maybe not a 100 question test, but maybe a 21 million question test. Little bit of fun. And as well as that, Brian, like on the Orange Pill app OPA, you've got like a Bitcoin jobs as well. People can, there's that group. It's pretty exciting what's going on. Like you're saying, like it's been out for a year and a half and you're already organizing these things. People can set events as well as brick and mortar. Are there online Bitcoin stores or it's all physical locations being vetted at the minute?
Great question. The merchant section, it needs to have a physical address tied to it so that people can locally find you, right? Like, so you're actually putting a physical address on there. Now, if you have an online business, just sign up. It's a little bit cheaper. Sign up for an individual user account, and then you can advertise your online business through your Orange Pill app profile. So just anything that's in your profile is searchable to anybody on the network. So if you type in, I'm a Bitcoin plumber, I'm a Bitcoin barber, or whatever, any of that information, people can find it if they're looking it up. And again, the magic of this is if there is an element, I guess I just described two like physical types of businesses. So let's change it to like Panties for Bitcoin. Panties for Bitcoin is a company that's online only. So,
just quickly on them, how good are they? Man, their briefs, holy cow.
I really like their briefs a lot.
Amazing.
I wear them all the time when I work out. Like they're comfortable, they're breathable. They don't bunch up like a lot of those types of compression-y type shorts. They can be too snug in certain spots that you don't want them to be and all that. So they put a lot of time and effort into designing it. And it shows. They've been in that business for a long time. And that's part of what I actually write a quick little synopsis of them. I was working with them on strategy for a little bit. I don't work with them anymore, but they're still great friends of mine. I help whenever I can. I wrote a little bit about them in my book and just talking about that journey of going from we've made panties, we've made garments our whole life. So how do we contribute to Bitcoin? It's really easy to think, oh, I don't know how to develop. I don't know how to program. I don't have $10 million to invest in a Bitcoin startup or anything like that. So I can't help build in Bitcoin. No, take your fiat world skills and just bring them to Bitcoin. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything beyond that other than tell the world, hey, I'm ready to give in Bitcoin what I give to the fiat world right now. Every time you do that, it's a vote against the existing fiat system. Yeah. Like every stat you stack is a vote against the existing fiat system. But then every transaction you do in the Bitcoin parallel economy is also taking oxygen away from the fiat system. We don't need to burn that old system down. We just need to deprive it of oxygen. Like that's all we need to do. And then we win. Like it's not the most complicated thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And just opt out, buy, stack, and chill. It's really like Bitcoin's not complicated. That's like there's three things. You need to buy, you need to stack, you need to chill, and I guess read the books or eat the bugs. But that's just to keep your conviction and to learn why this is so important. One thing that I think I've got a couple more news things to get through. We'll get into them, but this is fascinating. With say like somebody comes on a fiat company and they come on like, hey, we're happy to accept Bitcoin. We're Bitcoin now or whatever. Bitcoiners don't trust, they verify. So if their product's not up to scratch, people aren't going to buy it. Like in fiat, money is so cheap, it burns a hole in your pocket. It's going down. So people are just happy to buy nonsense, like quantity over quality. But Bitcoiners, I think, still buy stuff. Like I buy a lot of nice things, but all of it's quality. I want it to last. I want it to be good. I want it to be bang for my buck. Because whether I'm using Bitcoin or fiat, I'm getting less Bitcoin if I'm buying something. You know, I bought a chair 2 weeks ago and got trolled hard for it. But that's less Bitcoin I can buy. So I wanted to buy a suitable chair on a Bitcoin standard. I think people are going to realize, companies are going to realize, hey, we're still getting a lot of fiat, but we're not getting as much Bitcoin. Why is that? Oh, our product's not good enough for Bitcoiners. Let's bring out a better product, because they will want to get more and more Bitcoin as they see that fiat economy going down as well. That's how I see it. I just think everything literally gets better on a Bitcoin standard. Everything. Like what doesn't?
Well, and that's exactly what I can't think of what doesn't. I mean, maybe we'll learn. But yeah, fiat is really bad for fiat. But yeah, that's when I talked about natural market forces earlier. Like that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like that's how things evolve through the economy to get better goods and services and stuff, is because people will have a higher standard. I think things like review websites, like Apollo Sats, there's some Bitcoin review sites now. I think that those will become more and more important. I think Bitcoiners will really look to the reviews, like the crowdsource information of what's the deal with this company? What's their customer service like? What's their product like? Like, you know, we're going to look into those things a bit more. My wife does that. I mean,
so does mine.
Like a crazy degree, where I'm like, hey, I think you've done enough homework. And so maybe there's a fine line, but I kid you not, man. Like knowing that the mother of my children finds the best possible food, best possible products for my kids. And again, is being price conscious and all those things, is like, hey, we'll spend more if we're going to get more. And that's the thing. I think the old school mindset was, how do I find the cheapest thing possible? So there really was a race to the bottom. And my kids were asking that the other day. They were asking, are there any like high quality companies that are these big mega corporations? I mean, that they were kind of asking it in kid lingo, but they were this literally last night we were talking about this over the table, and we had a great opportunity to talk about fiat. And like, yes, there are some companies that have really expensive things, but those tend to be more niche, right? The things that have mass appeal, it's like trying to find the cheapest price point possible to the most people possible. And you know what, that is unsustainable. You know how we know it's unsustainable, aside from everything we know as Bitcoiners? Look at 99-cent store. I don't know if you saw the news on 99-cent stores here in the US. They have something like 700 stores nationwide. They all closed because that is an unsustainable business model. I think they just announced it like this week or last week, a giant chain of stores, because that whole business model was predicated on a race to the bottom. How do we give the most cheap products? And it's sad because it's actually going to affect a lot of really poor communities and stuff like that depended on those things. But maybe in the end, it will be for the better. Maybe they'll have to buy a little bit better things or healthier things that, yes, it's going to be tougher for them, but ultimately it might be better for them. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, models that are predicated on a race to the bottom just do not last.
Yep. Thank God for Bitcoin. Hey, it's I have so much hope, so much joy, so much like anticipation and excitement for the future because of Bitcoin. But we've got it. So you know, like there is that escape valve. But imagine if there wasn't. And there's just that race to zero, and everything just got cheaper and crapper, and businesses are folding, inflation's going up. I think it may take a little while for Bitcoin to fix everything, but I think we're going to see that more and more over the next couple of years. BlackRock put out a couple of ads yesterday. One was pink, one was blue. the driest Bitcoin ads to date, I believe. But they're pretty high signal. So I'd just like to play it quickly because Wall Street's now turned into Bitcoin's marketing manager. Brian Zement's the marketing manager for the Orange Pill app, and Larry Fink now is the marketing manager for Bitcoin as a whole. A little bit tongue in cheek, actually, buy Bitcoin, hold your private keys. Somebody asked me about the Bitbox Bitcoin only edition. Haven't used it, don't know. I don't believe it's air gapped though. I'm against anything that's not air gapped. It just makes no sense to be taking that risk ever. The possibility of anything happening, hey, it's low, but it's not as non-zero chance, and this is generational wealth. But let's hit up BlackRock and see what they had to say. We'll just show the pink version today. And sorry, we need to hit play.
Bitcoin adoption has grown significantly since it was created over 15 years ago. It's the world's leading and most widely adopted cryptocurrency, and it's maintained its dominance even as the number of digital assets has grown to over 20,000. So what's driving Bitcoin's growth? Well, first, the continued digital transformation of the global economy. It's changing the world of finance, and with that, creating a growing interest in digital assets and new use cases for Bitcoin. Second, younger generations are more likely to be considered digital natives, resulting in higher rates of Bitcoin adoption. And lastly, certain global trends such as rising inflation and geopolitical divisions have increased Bitcoin's appeal as a scarce asset that exists independently of any one country or central bank. In parallel to the three aspects driving Bitcoin adoption, we've also seen some shifts in the overall industry. In particular, there have been key developments in the infrastructure of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and the regulatory environment has and continues to evolve. Now, the combination of all of these factors has helped bring us to this moment, the availability of Bitcoin ETFs, which are helping make Bitcoin more accessible.
Yeah, cool. Don't buy the ETFs, just buy Bitcoin. There would be my thought. But what she had to say, Brian, is Bitcoin, it's like a flight to safety. Basically, it's an inflation heft. The younger generation, they're getting into it. They're computer native. They're born with it. They understand it. It's independent of countries and banks, which is like the biggest draw card no nation state can get away. Then what she was going on to say is the infrastructure has really been built out. I guess that's what we were just talking about with Orange Pill app, the parallel economy that's coming out, and even the social layer and the nomadic warfare. And the regulatory environment has changed. So like, it's been changing. Bitcoin's been out for 15 years. We're going into the fourth epoch now where, we're on the final day, ladies and gentlemen, of Bitcoin's third epoch. Like, it's only 15 years. This is history. Like, you're literally part of the greatest story that's ever been told. Each and every one of us is here in whatever way. If you're just buying and stacking and chilling, you're changing your life and you can help change somebody else's life, or you're in the parallel economy. Like, this is truly amazing. The greatest wealth transfer in human history is happening. But what were some of the things from that? What are your thoughts about like BlackRock? They've obviously made it easier to digest for the general public. They're, I don't know, potentially a fairly evil corporation in general, or they have been in the past. But what are your thoughts about how Bitcoin's recently changed in the eyes of regulators and Wall Street?
I mean, it's funny because I agree with everything she said. Like, it's shocking. You're like waiting for the punchline of, all right, where can I trash on this? Yeah. But I think that one of the things I wrote in Bitcoin Evangelism was in response, one of the big pushbacks we get in Bitcoin is, well, the government's going to regulate it. Government's going to try and do without it, right? And there have been governments that have tried that, and one that just spurs on Bitcoin adoption. I think the big boys have recognized that Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. And what do smart people do? This is what anybody that's passed down wealth from multiple generations, and I'm talking about the evil people of society. These people aren't dumb. How did Rockefeller have 4, 5, 6 generations of wealth passed down? Because he always adapted his monopoly, right? He started in the kerosene industry and then changed to fuel, gasoline, and not only like did they figure out, okay, kerosene's kind of like not as popular because of like electricity now, so then we adapt our monopoly to make gasoline, but then we have all these really expensive byproducts like petroleum jellies and things like that we need to pay all this money to get rid of. Well, hey, what can we do with this petroleum off byproduct? They started making petroleum products, and that's how you get petroleum-based medicine and all these things. So yes, it's very, very evil, but they figured out how to adapt and roll with technology. And there's plenty of people who had monopolies that did not want to let go of their monopoly. And so then they became disrupted and became irrelevant to history. Larry Fink, I believe, studies history. Some of the very powerful people out there study history. And if they've done Sailor, they realize that if they want to stay at the top of society, they need to roll with the way technology changes. None of them are powerful enough to stop those things from happening. And so that was my prediction in Bitcoin evangelism. I think the big boys in governments are going to try and find ways to profit off of Bitcoin. BlackRock has done a fantastic job profiting off of Bitcoin. They've made tons and tons of money in the last 3 months off of fees of understanding that people want to buy and hold Bitcoin. And maybe they feel that they can exert some sort of influence over Bitcoin because they hold so much in their fund, which they can't, but maybe they think that will somehow buy them favor. Now, I am concerned that some of these funds are actually donating to Bitcoin devs, where that could be a great thing, right? More well-resourced developers on Bitcoin could make better and more secure things for Bitcoin. That's great. But it also is that their backdoor way to influence the Bitcoin network by exerting monetary influence over developers. I certainly hope not. But I think at the end of the day, I think that this was inevitable. This was BlackRock making pro-Bitcoin commercials was the only outcome that really made sense, because they couldn't stop Bitcoin, and they're not dumb enough to not make Bitcoin, not make money off of Bitcoin. So this was the cross section of those two things.
Yeah, and just on the one point about the Wall Street paying the developers. So I had Matt Hogan, the CIO of Bitwise, on 2 weeks after they launched the Bitcoin ETF, and I asked him 2 questions straight away. Number one, have you published your private your public address? No, he hadn't. I said, can you? And he said he'll find out. And then he gave me credit for pushing him on that fact, which was pretty freaking surreal, man. Really cool. But sitting down, talking with them backstage before we went live, having a chat, they've been in Bitcoin for quite a while. They understand it. Yes, they're going to go down the S-Coin route if that comes to pass. They're in the business of making money. But I think Bitwise, they get it. Like, they understand. And then the second question I asked is, are there any strings attached? Like, what's the incentive of you guys? And they're like, no strings attached. We're not going to ask them to do anything. We're not going to say anything. So whether they follow through and greed changes that, or they feel like they can get in. But like, I asked him point blank, and you can get a pretty good read on people most of the time. And he said, no, can't talk for everyone on Wall Street, and I can't talk about what they're doing in the future. But I don't know. I guess I believe him. And could that change? Potentially. I'm not saying I always will. People do change, but I don't know. At this stage, I believe they just want Bitcoin to do its thing. Like, they didn't do anything to get Bitcoin to where it is, and they're still benefiting off it. So just by letting Bitcoin be Bitcoin and the market deciding this is how we want Bitcoin, voting with the node and implementing soft forks, like there are soft forks that are needed with Bitcoin. These things are going to happen. I think, if BlackRock is potentially a little bit scary if they were to come in and say, hey, we want to do this, but people just vote and probably not implement anything BlackRock has to say. But we'll see. Plan B's got a pretty interesting take on the halving. Love him or hate him, the stock to flow guy came up with it. And It's like all models are good, or they're useful until they're not, and all models will be broken like 100% of the time. Plan B is famous for that. It's following it pretty well. It's following the power law pretty well. But just Plan B talking about the halving, and the reason I bring it up is because it's a little bit different to what your take is. You're talking about going into a super cycle. Plan B says, in my opinion, this Bitcoin halving will not be different. All Bitcoin price increase will again be around the halving. Buying 6 million before the halving, selling 18 million after the halving. Green line will outperform buy and hold. Bitcoin, about 100,000 2024, 300,000 is the top in 2025. Then we go into another bear market. At the start, you said you could expect us to go into a super cycle. Do you have like a price target where Bitcoin needs to hit for it to go into sort of super cycle territory? Because most people aren't going to be paying attention till Bitcoin's at 100,000. Some people aren't going to pay attention till Bitcoin's at $1 million. But do you have like a number where the world's like, oh, Bitcoin's that much, like we better get some just in case it catches on?
Yeah, I think each one of those is psychological levels. Like 100K is going to mean something, and 500K. I think that what is it? I forget off the top of my head, but I think around 500,000 Bitcoin's kind of near the market cap of gold.
Yeah, 600,000, I think.
600,000. So yeah. I think that's a pretty powerful moment, right? And Bitcoin wasn't talked about enough. But if you go back, there was pretty monumental moments when Bitcoin became equivalent of, it reached parity with a $100 bill, right? A $100 bill was like the status of like, wow, that's our biggest kind of normal unit of currency. That seemed like a big deal. Then when Bitcoin became the equivalent of an ounce of gold, which I forget what it was at the time, $2,000, $2,500, that was like a big deal. It's like a gold coin was seen as something very, very valuable. And now a Bitcoin is on par with that. So then once you get to the point where Bitcoin is the equivalent of gold, think about gold. Gold is the way we reference wealth in all societies. Oh, it's worth a pound of gold. It's this gold. It's worth its weight in gold. Like our vernacular surrounds gold. So when Bitcoin reaches parity with gold, I think that's going to be the moment where it's undeniable. Gold is undeniable. There's people who don't like gold for their portfolio because it doesn't have cash flows and stuff, but they would never argue that gold isn't a substantial asset in the world. And so I think that 600,000, whatever that market cap where it reaches parity with gold, obviously gold's going up, so it's kind of a moving target, but I think that's going to be the moment where we really hit this public zeitgeist awakening.
I just brought up the Clark Moody dashboard. So we're 9.04% of the market cap of gold, rounded up to 10%. We're sitting at about 60,000 to round it down. So times that by 10. I've just lost my boom. This is what happens when you get excited and you go live. Oh man, that's so good on BTC Sessions. Shout out to BTC Sessions, Simply Bitcoin, all the Bitcoiners out there creating content, getting the signal. But sorry, let me scroll down a little bit. That number there. So say roughly 10%, a 10x from here, that's $600,000. Yes, I agree that when we're on parity with gold, it could be, it'll be one of those moments. It'll be a defining moment. And my opinion is it's inevitable. I don't know when that will happen. But do you sort of have any time frame of when you think it could play out?
I keep coming back to the 10-year frame because I think that CBDCs are going to be a big stimulus, and I think that's going to be within the next few years. But I think that 10-year is the upper threshold, like I said, with the U.S. being unable to service its debt, or physically being unable to service its debt because of it being all of tax revenue. So I say 10 years or less. I can only speak in generalities because honestly, I think that anytime I try to speak specifically, it just sounds like a fool's errand. It's very fun to guess. So a lot of my friends will say, yeah, yada, 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 Brian, I get it. You don't want to give an exact target. I said, well, if you want me to throw out a number, I'll throw out a number, but I think that if I had to throw out a number, I think that 600,000, the market cap of gold is realistic in this cycle. It all comes back to exponential growth. I mean, the price of Bitcoin from one sale to a next can go up by any amount of money. People don't realize that if there's no Bitcoin for sale in any given moment, then the threshold for the price of the next Bitcoin can be any number. It could go from $50,000 in one transaction to $100,000 in one transaction if there are no sellers. Obviously, there's traders and there's people that are in the middle. But as the message of Bitcoin spreads and increases, and you see more BlackRock commercials developing high conviction people, there's going to be people that hold the ETFs that have very high conviction of Bitcoin as an asset. They're not going to understand it for its privacy and its censorship resistance, but they're going to have high conviction that there's only 21 million of them in the world and that they want to hold a piece of that. As those people grow, there's going to be a point, I think, in the not too distant future, I think it's going to come at the end of this cycle, where we say supply shock all the time, but I think we're going to see our first ever supply shock of, holy crap, there's no Bitcoin for sale. What do we do? And you're going to see the biggest 1 minute candle that we've ever seen in Bitcoin because of that supply shock. And it's because of the public awareness of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's becoming more separated from crypto. The more we get separated from crypto, and the more awareness, the more it's tied to the ideas of gold and sound money, that's going to click for people, and that's going to send that public consciousness realization of, I have to hold some, not trade some. I have to hold some. That's when that's going to change, and that's when that true supply shock, I think, will happen.
I think that sort of forms part of like Samson Mouse thesis as well for that Omega candle, is a liquid supply, what's been held for more than a year. It's increasing. It's going to continue. Maybe it won't continue to increase. It'll hang out where it is. But as the supply, especially straight after the halving, is cut in half, and like over the weekend, or was it yesterday, there's a huge, 4,000 coins or more. The exchanges are at their lowest level of supply ever. I think the single biggest outflow of coins on Coinbase yesterday. Wow. Before the halving. I'll need a fact check, but I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. I'm pretty sure it was Coinbase. I'm pretty sure it's the highest ever. And then we've got I'll bring this article up here. We've got Hong Kong approving the ETF. They're going to go live at the end of the month, just after the halving. It's in kind, it's spot. They have no futures. There's no trade against it. It's just pure spot buying of Bitcoin. And once the world sees that now the US is good, Canada's been good for a while, Hong Kong's coming in, Australia's launching one around June, July this year. And then we're going to see the likes of Singapore, Japan, South Korea all jump on the boat. And the marketing, like what we've just seen from just one institution, BlackRock. But then we have Fidelity, Bitwise, like everyone else, Cathie Wood, 21 shares. The consciousness, like Hong Kong, in their trains, they've got ads going on for Bitcoin and big billboards. I think once we get to the halving, the price starts moving. Every mainstream media channel is going to be talking about it. Every taxi driver, every barber, your butcher's going to be talking about it. I think it's if you're here last cycle after the halving, when the mainstream media really kicked in and that frenzy and that FOMO, things moved pretty quickly. Like we went from $3,300 to $69,420, like that. Like that, we fell 50% in 2 days to get down to that 3,300. So it can go the other way as well. Psychologically prepare for that. But if you've been buying, stack and chill and hitting the red button, mainly, like if you double tap the red buy button and make the most of it, buy in the green, buy when it's red. But get ready for it. I think, I don't know if we get an Omega candle, $100,000 in a day. It's definitely possible. Because if there's no Bitcoin there at all, bang, if people are, and maybe it's just a glitch. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's the new normal. Maybe it doesn't happen full stop. But just to know that it's possible is pretty amazing. And then like Australia, they're taking away powers, I won't bring it up, but it says Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has suggested that whatever powers are needed for authorities to crack down on the spread of misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, etc., would be used to ensure harmony is restored in society. This is for the common good. We had a situation in Australia, absolutely horrific, as sort of a one-off. But to bring these laws in, it's not about hate speech. It's like disinformation. Who gets to say that? Like the mainstream media absolutely stuffed up with C19. The amount of propaganda that came out, the lies, the misinformation, the disinformation, the hate speech there for people that were unwilling to get vaccinated. This allows them to go after whatever they deem as misinformation. They're not saying the truth. Like, they're just going to label things, and the truth will probably be what they label disinformation. So with those type of things happening around the world, if anyone in the chat's got more information, it looks like yesterday over in the States, I think it was 9 states, but 7 of them are Texas, Florida, Nebraska, Nevada, South Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota. You're in Florida, Brian, and you hadn't heard anything about this.
I'm in California.
Okay.
Yeah. Other coast.
Other coast, the other side away. So it's saying rumors are emerging of a massive nationwide cyber attack. We saw the World Economic Forum before the pandemic happened, 6 months before. They did do a training drill for a worldwide pandemic, a super spreader event. 6 months later, hey, we get COVID. This year, or late last year, sorry, they did some training for a cybersecurity attack. What would happen if the world's infrastructure went down? We have seen some pretty interesting things, whether they're linked or not. Boats driving into bridges, 9/11 services going down. They're testing the systems here. Telstra, Optus, our phone service providers, McDonald's, I believe, KFC. They're just testing to see how people react when these things go down. Maybe some are proper, undisclosed, but either way, like these type of things are coming. So I think it's pretty important to be able to prepare. I just want to bring this back up. We brought it back up right at the start, and I can't believe it. 1 day, 4 hours, 1 minute, roughly. What do you think? So, like, what are a couple of things people can do to prepare psychologically? And if anyone's got any questions, drop a Q in front of it and smash the like button if you can. Get the video out, subscribe if you haven't already. The halving coming up. Number one, Bitcoin will not get cut in half. If you have 10 Bitcoin, you're not going to now have 5 Bitcoin tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. It's just the amount of Bitcoin that comes out daily. What I believe you should prepare for is it's going to be pretty volatile. You know, in the last week, it's moved $10,000 in the down direction. More of this to come, I think, for the next couple of weeks. But what other things do you reckon people should start to do or start to think about to be ready? This is a historic event, and we're 1 day away from it.
I would just get ready for your faces to melt because the price is going to go crazy. No, I told Sean offline, I was like, I don't know if I would say this publicly, but he told me to say it publicly. So here's the theory. And when you hear everybody say the same thing, which I think in this case is the sensible thing. Hey, when the halving happens, nothing other than from block 840,000 to 840,001, nothing changes other than the supply issuance, which is actually a thing that happens in binary. It's not necessarily even happening from 6 1/4 to 3.125. It's like a binary. It's like even less eventful than what you think, even though it has real world implications. Now, everybody's saying the sensible thing. Nothing's going to happen in terms of price. Now, here's just a counter thought. Last weekend, when the price went down, a lot of people were saying it kind of happened right at the same time as all this Iran and Israel kind of conflict was escalating, and that fears of war, especially World War III, because all these headlines were going live around the world, that triggered bot sentiment traders to trade whatever was available on the weekend, which Bitcoin and crypto are the things that are tradable on the weekends, right? When nothing else is tradable, Bitcoin and crypto are tradable because they're 24/7, 365. And so those were triggered by sentiment analysis from bots. And I think that actually was the case, because if you look at charts, I mean, I was paying attention to the news. I was listening to the news. If I wanted to trade, I don't trade Bitcoin, but if I wanted to trade Bitcoin, I wouldn't have been able to trade it that quickly. Like, these things are trading by the minute. As soon as news hits, the price is going down immediately. That's obviously an aggregation of bot traders. Now, think about the other way. What happens to popular sentiment bots when every article this weekend is going to be Bitcoin halving, what's going to happen to the price? Is the price going to double? Blah, 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 blah. What the sentiment analysis on those bots might go bananas. So we could be looking at $82,000 Bitcoin by Monday morning because of the halving. So is that what I think is going to happen? I think it's possible. But again, I would say enter the weekend with a calm mind. Realize that if the price does stay down, appreciate it, because this is going to be one of the last few moments that we feel like we're getting. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're over $60,000 Bitcoin in US dollars. And we're like, oh, it feels cheap now because last month Bitcoin was at 74K. That's insane to think that Bitcoin at 62,000 is cheap, or 63,000 is cheap. You know what? It is cheap, because in the not too distant future, we're going to be lamenting the time that we're going to be lamenting that we can't get sub 100K USD Bitcoin anymore. And that's coming up real soon. You're going to have conversations with your friends, and it's going to be prompted by this halving. The halving is going to be the catalyst for price appreciation over the next 18 months. Is it going to happen tomorrow? I don't think so. But over the next 18 months, I would actually I am betting a lot of money and my time and energy that this will make the price of Bitcoin, or the buying power of Bitcoin, going up. Mark my words, you are going to have conversations with friends that, man, I wish I could have bought Bitcoin for $100,000. Like, that phrase is going to be spoken from the mouths of people all over the world. They're not going to be talking about $100 Bitcoin or $10,000 Bitcoin. They're going to say, I wish I could have had $100,000 Bitcoin. When we're below $100,000, that sounds stupid. There's going to be a day when Bitcoin's 600K and $100,000 is going to sound so cheap, and people are going to be depressed that they didn't get in then. And that's in the future.
Yeah, and it's coming. It's just on what time frame. It's pretty exciting. Let's bring this up. So, like, you're spot on, $63,000, and it does feel cheap. And like you're saying, it is cheap. You still get 1,571 satoshis per USD. Every $10, you get 15,710 satoshis. That's a pretty bloody good deal. It's gonna continue to keep dropping. Like last week when it was over 73,000, we're down at like the 1,300 levels for the satoshis. So they're getting more scarce, and come tomorrow, they're really going to be cut down. So 177 blocks to go. TikTok, next block. We are sitting at block height 839,823. It looks like that was mined an hour ago. Let's just double check. 823 that this has refreshed. It should. No, there we go. Less blocks. 169 remaining. 169. So block height 839,831, and let's just the hash rate is up 85 basis points in the last 24 hours as well. The fees tomorrow, I think, could be pretty crazy. People stuffing around with JPEGs on chain, trying to get them into that block, and just in the halving day in general. So if you need to do any UTXO management, maybe today's a good day. And the last block reward, the fees made up 13.07%, sort of the highest we've seen in a little while. It sort of died down for a while, like it was high, and we had a little bit of quietness, cheap fees, and they're probably going to be back for a while and ride this news cycle train. They can do whatever. I don't know. I'd feel better if they stuffed around on Ethereum. They can just put their fucking clown pictures.
That's what Ethereum's
on a
for.
clown chain. Yeah, exactly. It is. Yeah. And it's for monkeys, but I don't know. People can do whatever they want. It's your money. It's your choice. There is a massive big truck or a tank on the road. And it'd be very unlikely for a tank to be on the road.
The CBDCs are coming, man. They're coming to you first.
CBDCs.
They're bringing a tank to show you.
Like crazy things, fiat economy, like the amount of money that Dubai spends on cloud seeding every week, and then advertising cloud seeding, putting out that information, and then they had 2 years worth of rain in one day. And I don't know if they tried to time it with the shitcoin conference that was going on there. It just happened. So maybe that's a sign if you are shitcoining is just buy Bitcoin or have fun staying poor. Like there's 15 years old, the greatest opportunity. Do you have any thoughts on weather modification? Should they do it? Should we be trying to play God, or should we just let nature do nature? Like obviously they're a desert there, so they want the rain, but are they better to desalinate the seawater and irrigate instead of?
I think I know that's an expensive process to desalinate on that level, but I think that their technology would continue to evolve. That'd be pretty rad if we could water the planet pretty effectively through using ocean water. No, I'm not a fan of cloud seeding. I live in Southern California. We cloud seed like crazy here. We've had a pretty good amount of rain. They don't publicly state it like they do over there in the Middle East. Like unfortunately, when you say it to half of my friends, they're like, "You're crazy," but there's literally X's in the sky, and I mean it's nuts. If I talk to any of my friends who are from the Air Force or anything like that, they're like, "Yeah, we cloud seed." Like I've been in a plane where we've done that before. I always sound nasally. I sound extra nasally. Everybody I know, like almost everybody I know, has had an ongoing sinus infection here for like the last 3 months when they've been doing heavy seeding. Like this stuff that they're pumping into the sky. Whether it gives you the rain you want, yes, we've had more rainfall and snowfall. I've enjoyed it for my snowboarding because I've snowboarded more this season. But I literally think it is making us sicker because the stuff just falls on us, man. Like we're breathing it in. And if you look at our the parts per million in terms of the sky, every day looks like we have the worst smog ever, which in rainy season, that shouldn't be the case. Like in rainy season, you usually have less smog. We only have smog or bad particles in the air in the summertime when we didn't have a lot of rain. But now we're having high rain and crazy particles in the air being measured. Like that's part of the weather forecast. Oh yeah, the air quality is really bad, but it's also going to rain today. Those two things shouldn't be happening at the same time. Yeah,
the rain definitely should be sweeping the thing. One thing I haven't brought up in this total change of gears, but Parallel Economy coming out on the 20th there in the States. I will put a link in the description. I haven't just yet, but I'll do it straight away after, so people can look and get those seed words and find it. I'm with great anticipation, Brian. I'm looking forward to getting that signed copy. And I'm going to hold it with pride. I really, really look forward to it. I'm sure it's going to be a real cool read. And if people don't already know that saying, read the books or eat the bugs, it made it. It made the final cut, which is a huge honor. Before we jump out of here, just a shout out to everyone that's been stacking, that's been buying, chilling, doing the right thing. Like, well done. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, cloud seeding, the fiat economy failing, inflation going through the roof, CBDCs, digital IDs. And whether all of these things are real or not, Bitcoin's still going up. But if they are real, Bitcoin's going up more, and it's probably that ticket to freedom. Do you have a message for people, or a congratulations, or I just want to give you the floor, Brian, and anything that's top of mind is over to you.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I would just say that you were born for such a time as this. I said at the beginning of the show is that nobody in your family history before you or after you is going to have the ability to stamp their moment in history like you can for your family right now. Whether our names are written down in the history books of world history or not, which is not going to be the case probably for most of us, unless we're those Michael Saylors and those types of people. But in your family history, you better believe that 2-3 generations from now, when the world has changed to a Bitcoin standard and people look back on fiat, people are going to look back on fiat and recognize it for what it was, that it was a blight against humanity, that it was evil. I mean, and think about this. The way we look back on the Nazis or the gulags of the communists, of the Soviet Union and things like that, like the crimes against humanity that were created or that were done in the past, we always ask the question, why were normal people along for the ride of that? And so those people also get judged, like the average citizens of society that just passively allowed those things to happen. We look back on them with disdain and weakness and apathy. But the generations that are going to come after, that are going to look back when we're in a hyper Bitcoinized world, they're going to look back on fiat. What they're going to say is, my family was not part of that passive portion of society that allowed this to happen. My family was a part of the change. And so whether you're just buying and stacking and passing that information on to your family and those around you, or whether you're out there building in Bitcoin, participating in Bitcoin, participating in the parallel economy, whatever side of the equation you're on, your family is going to know that you had a place, a relevant place in history that helped move the world forward. Like in terms of progress, and not in like the wishy-washy woo-woo way that we say progress nowadays, like in the politically correct sense, but in I'm talking about progress of humanity is going to be made in this generation. And if you're here for the ride, you're a part of that. So I don't have anything else to sell to you or to pitch you on other than do what you're doing. And if you feel so compelled, yes, there's resources out there to take even more steps if you feel so called to do that. But just understand that it is not by coincidence that you are here in this moment doing what you're doing. It has bigger implications than just killing some time watching a video or watching an interview. It actually matters for history, it matters for your family, it matters for the world.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's the most important thing us as individuals could do to make our lives in the world a better place. And it is history. I think that was a beautiful way to sum it up. What I'd like to say to everyone watching is I've linked Brian's book below. It drops on 420 over in the States the day after the halving. If you $2.99 or $3.99, Brian? What was it? $2.99?
$2.99 for the pre-sale. Yep.
Cool. There's a seed word, 12 words in there, and you could get 1 million Satoshis if you're the first person. If you get the digital copy pre-order, you're going to be one of the first people. Bitcoin Evangelism was the first book Brian wrote. It's absolutely awesome. You are at a very important time in human history. Like I say it every day, you buy, you stack, and you chill. I got it written on a shirt. Because I think it's so important. I wear these shirts absolutely everywhere. They're the same shirts, just different colors. I don't think there's a more important message right now. Like I think we need to do it ourselves and do it with other people. If you want to send the signal, the bitcoinlab.io. But most importantly, just buy as much Bitcoin and talk about it as much as possible. Sharing these videos, sharing any Bitcoin videos, any Bitcoin articles with friends, family. It's history, and tomorrow, if you haven't been here, tomorrow is going to be a massive catalyst. Whether we pump on the day or we don't, or we dump on the day, it does not matter. It's a life-changing day for every one of us here that managed to buy, stack, and chill. Hold on long term. Have a beautiful day, and I think I'll probably see you tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure I can't help myself on the halving to go live, but we'll see what's possible. Hit subscribe if we vibe, and much love. Man, this is so exciting. I'm so pumped for the halving, hey?
It's almost here, baby. Let's go.
Let's go.